I'm Harold. I'm 82 years old, and I've spent the better part of my life thinking I had everything figured out. I worked hard, I raised a family, I retired comfortably, but now looking back, I see something I did decades ago that still haunts me, something I wish I could tell my younger self so clearly that he would never make the same mistake. And I want to tell it to you too. Maybe it can save you years of regret. It's not a story about crime or scandal or betrayal. It's ordinary. In fact, that's exactly why it matters. The kind of ordinary that most people barely notice as it happens, but that slowly shapes the course of your life. I made a choice, or rather I failed to make a choice, because I didn't realize the stakes. When I was 25, I married Linda. We met in college in Michigan. She had this laugh that could fill a room and a kindness that felt impossible to find in the world. I was working a few part-time jobs while finishing my degree, trying to figure out how I would ever afford my own apartment, let alone start a life with someone. But somehow, everything clicked. We got married in a small chapel near her parents' house. It was beautiful, simple, perfect. And in those first few years, I believed I could do anything as long as I had her by my side. We moved into a small house in Lansing. I started working as an accountant, climbing the corporate ladder slowly but steadily. Linda stayed home for a while before deciding to go back to school to finish her degree in education. Everything looked normal on the surface. We had dreams. We had love. We had plans. And that's where the mistake began. I never realized at the time how much I depended on Linda, not just for love, but for emotional support, for companionship, for even the small everyday details that keep a marriage alive. She kept our home organized. She remembered birthdays and holidays. She managed my moods when I was stressed. And I didn't see it. I thought I was strong. I thought I was handling life. But in reality, I was coasting on her presence, on her care, and on her quiet devotion. I never thanked her enough. I didn't notice enough. I didn't say the things I should have said. By the time we had our first child, a boy named Matthew, I was working 60, sometimes 70 hours a week. I was ambitious, focused on getting ahead, making sure we had financial security, and we did. We had a nice house, a reliable car, vacations once or twice a year, birthdays that were celebrated properly. But in focusing so much on providing, I stopped noticing the emotional undercurrents of our marriage. I didn't notice when Linda started to seem tired, when her smile sometimes felt forced, when she seemed to carry the weight of our household almost entirely on her own. I remember one evening when Matthew was about 2. I came home exhausted from work, looking forward to relaxing on the couch. Linda was in the kitchen washing dishes. She smiled at me and asked how my day was. I barely looked up. I mumbled something polite, sat down, and picked up the newspaper. That was it. That night we didn't talk. We didn't hug. I didn't ask how she was. And I didn't realize that moments like that, repeated thousands of times, were slowly eroding the foundation of our relationship. We had 3 children in total. By the time the youngest, Emily, was born, Linda was exhausted, not just physically but emotionally. And I was too busy trying to climb my ladder, trying to make sure our children had every opportunity I hadn't had, to notice that she was fading. She tried to tell me, she tried to hint at it, but I didn't hear it. I thought I was providing stability, and that was enough. I thought love was enough. But love, it turns out, is not enough when it's not tended to, when it's not nurtured, when the little gestures, the little words, the quiet attentions are missing. When the children started school, I began working even more. Over time, networking events, promotions, I told myself I was doing it for the family. But looking back, I realized that in chasing the security of the future, I neglected the present. I missed dinners, I missed school plays, I missed conversations with Linda that might have mattered far more than any raise or promotion ever could. I was there in body, but not in mind, not in heart. It wasn't dramatic. We didn't fight constantly. We didn't scream or yell. We just drifted, and I didn't notice. I thought everything was fine because there wasn't a crisis. But that was the mistake. I believed that if nothing was broken in the moment, it would last forever. I assumed that love was self-sustaining, that devotion was automatic. And it's not. You have to choose it every day. You have to show up emotionally. You have to notice the small things that make someone feel seen and appreciated. I didn't. By the time I was 50, Linda had started spending more time outside the house, volunteering, visiting friends, reconnecting with parts of herself that I had ignored. She was trying to find joy outside of the life we built together, and I felt left behind. I didn't understand why she seemed distant. I blamed work stress. I blamed my own fatigue. I blamed her sometimes. But really, I was only blaming myself in ways I didn't recognize, because I was failing at the one thing that mattered most: being present, being attentive, being emotionally available to the person I loved most in the world. Eventually, Linda told me she wanted a separation. I remember sitting in the living room, the walls of our house suddenly too small, the silence between us too loud. She looked at me with a mixture of sadness and determination, and she said, "Harold, I don't want to drift further. I need to know I'm alive, that I'm seen, that I matter." And in that moment, I felt a pain that I will never forget. A pain that was not fear of being alone, but fear of what I had done, or rather, what I hadn't done, for decades. We separated amicably. There was no shouting, no vindictiveness. We both loved our children and wanted the transition to be as gentle as possible. But the separation was devastating for me. I realized that the years I thought I had invested in my family had been spent mostly on work, on ambition, on being practical, on trying to secure a future that now felt meaningless without emotional connection. I had taken the woman I loved for granted. I had taken my family for granted, and I had no idea how to fix it. Linda eventually filed for divorce. I signed the papers quietly. I didn't argue. I didn't resist. And I felt a mix of relief and devastation I didn't know was possible. The relief came from knowing that the tension that had silently existed for years would finally stop pressing on both of us. The devastation came from realizing that the foundation I had ignored, the emotional core of our marriage, was gone, and I had allowed it to slip away. For years after the divorce, I thought I could move on by immersing myself in work, hobbies, and new routines. I tried, I traveled, I volunteered, I dated, I learned new skills, I made friends, and slowly life began to feel normal again. But the regret never left. It wasn't bitterness at Linda. It wasn't resentment. It was the quiet, persistent ache of knowing I had failed to truly appreciate the most important relationships in my life when I had the chance. I realized that the mistake I regret more than anything wasn't divorcing. The divorce was a consequence of my earlier choices. The mistake was failing to show up when it mattered most. The mistake was thinking that love could survive without attention, without presence, without care. And that is the mistake I want to warn you about. Don't wait for a crisis to wake you up. Don't assume someone will always be there. Don't let the quiet, ordinary moments slip by without acknowledgement. Because those moments are the glue that holds a life together. And if you ignore them, you may wake up decades later with regret that can't be undone. I often think about conversations I would have with my younger self if I could. I would tell him to slow down. I would tell him to notice the little things, to listen more than he talks, to hold hands, to hug, to say thank you even when it feels unnecessary. I would tell him that ambition and security are hollow without emotional connection, and that taking love for granted is a mistake that leaves scars not just on your spouse, but on yourself. Now, at 82, I live alone. I see my children often, and they are wonderful adults with their own families. I have grandchildren who bring me joy I never could have imagined, and I have learned to forgive myself for my past mistakes, to live with them, to tell my story in the hope that someone else might learn from it. But the regret is still there, not as a shadow, but as a quiet reminder of what truly matters. I share this with you because I want you to notice. Notice the small gestures, the unspoken support, the everyday presence of the people you love. Notice before it's too late. You don't need a dramatic event to realize this. You don't need a betrayal or a fight or a disaster. You just need to pay attention, to choose to show up emotionally, to be present in ways that matter every single day. Because the absence of these small things is the kind of mistake that takes a lifetime to understand. If I had done things differently, if I had been present, if I had truly appreciated Linda and the life we were building together, my story might have been different. Maybe we would have grown old together in the same house. Maybe I would have avoided the years of quiet regret. But I can't change that now. I can only share it. And maybe, just maybe, someone listening will hear these words and take them to heart before it's too late. So here's the truth. Don't wait. Don't assume love will sustain itself. Pay attention. Say thank you. Listen. Hold hands. Make time. Notice. The regret of quietly neglecting love is the hardest to bear, and I've lived with it. If this story resonates, please subscribe and turn on notifications for more real-life reflections. Share your experiences in the comments. Your story matters. I hope by sharing mine, you can love with intention before it's too late.